Good afternoon, everyone. I am proud to announce a great guest speaker here, Connie Florez, who's a producer here in town. She runs Hula Girl Productions, and I know she doesn't only produce, she does a whole bunch of stuff. So please give me a warm welcome to Connie Florez.
Thank you. Hi, I know you're going to have plenty of questions afterwards, and I was letting Erwin know that, I taught for 5 years up at ACM when they first started up there. And during that time, I learned a lot from students. And at the same time, I got to learn a lot about the audiences out there as well. And this was, of course, back in I'm dating myself, and when it first started at ACM. But I'm grateful to be here. I went to school here at Leeward Community College back in the mid-'80s. I wanted to go back to college, and I was sharing with Erin, my career started, I was playing volleyball, super jock in high school on the mainland, have family on the Big Island in the Hilo area and a homestead area in O'Okala from my mom to my great-great-grandparents. And so I found myself always going back and forth. Summers were always spent with family. And at the same time, I finished up at a community college on the mainland with doing fine arts, which I loved. And I did really well through high school with fine arts and playing volleyball, and things are taken care of. And then I got into the restaurant business. And some of the old timers in here might remember the old Armadillo Pizza. We're talking back in 79 was here, and opened up several stores here. I'm in Honolulu, my parents are in Hilo, and my siblings are in Hilo as well as Kauai. And I learned how to manage people through that experience, opened stores. I became a regional manager between the West Coast and here in the Berkeley, San Francisco area. And I learned about advertising, so the skills that I learned in college in fine arts, I also ended up utilizing in, believe it or not, in restaurant business. Won several awards through our local marketing firms. Just ideas, campaigns, radio ads, different things like that, commercials. And then I found myself like, do I want to keep doing this? Like I'm working 80 hours a week. Easy 80 hours a week. And I just found myself, took a break, came to Leeward Community College. And then after a year of that, I just found myself, okay, I'm back into the workforce. And I found myself going with an engineering firm locally. Kalani Aniole just finished being built then, and we were working on different projects here locally. So I was learning how to do bids and contracts with city and county, federal ones, and it was a telegraph machine. It was the old type thing, that's how it was then. The computers weren't even in at that time. They were just coming in. So I found myself learning quite a bit in that area. And I loved using this. And H3 project came up. So the company I was with literally delivers a lot of explosives and things that are for imploding the old Kaiser building that was on Waterfront where now the Prince is. It was those kind of projects that we had, and Pearl Harbor and so forth. From there, I went on into, I wanted more. I wanted to go back to college for engineering. And I found my job. I got so good at my job and we were doing very well. And from there, I found myself, I looked at what jobs did I admire out there, companies or firms. And I started working at United Parcel Service. And out of that company, they had a program, if you're a part-time supervisor, they will pay for your education. So I started working there, and that's where I started going back to school for engineering, starting at Honolulu Community College, because that's where it started on that, before UH. And I did that. I became a part-time supervisor in 6 months. I was there 15 years. And during that time, that's when I started realizing I was a philanthropist while I was with that engineering firm with the arts, because I love the arts. I'm going to support the arts. And then I found myself, I'm loving it and supporting it, why am I not participating in it? I've got a head on my shoulders. And so I started volunteering at the Honolulu Gay and Lesbian Cultural Foundation, which was brand new at the time. And they needed an executive director and to develop that. Chuck Bowler, who is the executive director for Hawaii International Film Festival, was also on that board, along with several pretty prominent people that I respected very well in film. I loved going to the film festival from when it started at the Hawaii International Film Fest. I felt like I could travel around the world by watching films. And I did. I went to those places I saw in the films. And I didn't do tour guides. I literally went there to learn about those cultures in those places, Southeast Asia and Tonga and New Zealand and so forth. And, but I found myself even more learning. And by the time we had the Honolulu Gay and Lesbian Film Festival was going on, so that went on. I did that for 15 years to where it can grow and become what it is today. It's 30-something years later, 35 years later, 37 years it's been going. It's like I think it's like the top 13, number 13 in the United States for oldest film festivals, right along with Hawaii International Film Fest. And so I found myself working with Hawaii International as well as there, and working in operations a lot, coordinating things. And you're probably asked, why do I share all of that with you and not go right to the grit? Because all of those experiences through there and all of that education helped me to become who I am today as a producer. Because I learned how to do grant writing, bids and contracts, which I do today. They call them CDS grants. That's what I've been working on in the last week. And CDS is Congressional Direct Spending. Yes, they fund projects that are like we're doing with media, with a nonprofit that we have locally as filmmakers, creating and going out to the schools. And those things are $1.5 million, $2 million. Salaries are paid for. But I started with that engineering job, learning how to do purchasing, how to do the grants, and I did really well, is what I'm getting at. Managing people, that's what a producer does. My business partner always says, you know, when the guys call you, because it's always the guys that are the writer-directors a lot of times. There are a lot of women writer-directors, but they want a mom. And producers are moms in some ways, you know, because we're taking care of the crew. We're making sure they're fed. We're making sure they're taken care of. But at the same time, we're making sure that we have, good example, the movie Waikiki, working with Kumu Hina. And when he brought it to me, no joke, I was in the hospital, I just had knee replacement, and he puts a script on my bed. I want you to be my producer on this. And I was just like, I got this going on. Well, we'll have it ready for you by the time you're out of here. And I'm like, well, I'm going to Cannes and I'm doing all these other things in 6 weeks. I did that in 6 weeks, but it was like, I tell you what, it was like, okay, I'm getting older, you know. And this was a while ago, of course, but it was like, after I read the script, I was like, I gotta do it. I get goosebumps just telling you that. I was like, I have to do the script. You know, I just, it was so important. It was so important, you know, and that changed. And I'm going to backtrack a little bit again. In 1998, Rena Owen, who is the star, and she's literally like a Tita sister. Rena Owen is the star in the movie Once Were Warriors. And she was here with a film We screened it, had everything. We got along so well, we were hanging out like sisters, and she goes, "You are a born producer. You need to produce. I know you're doing these film festival things with Hawaii International, Rainbow Film Fest, but you're good with people, you're a connector, you know how to, you know, you have good communication skills. Honey, you need to go that direction." And I kind of looked at her and I was like, No joke, within 30 days, there was a project that was coming up, and it was a group of UH students. I felt like the mom, because now I'm like 38 years old, and they're like 23, 24. And they were like, "We need a producer to do this and this and this." And during this time, been like 8 years with film festivals, I had seen enough trailers that I had reviewed, films, probably hundreds by this point, films, packages. You create a package, what we call an EPK, electronic press kit, that comes with your film. And as filmmakers, you want to go in that indie area, there's always, even in the studios, they have an electronic press kit. I got to see how those are laid out and how professionally they're done. I actually got to the point where I could see which ones worked and which ones didn't. That was probably the benefit of that, of seeing that, because then now I'm creating those same electronic press kits for my own projects here in Hawaii. At the same time, I'm looking at those and I'm just, maybe I can. So we had a feature project. We're still on film, 16 millimeter. Video is not around then, still film. And we shoot it. I go to places like the Wave, Waikiki, you know, and we're filming in there for these scenes. We get a local band in there, we're shooting, and we're doing all the things that are going on. And I'm just like, whoa. Did that film ever finish? That writer, director that was on it? No, it hasn't finished. I always wished that it would finish, but it never finished. However, in between all of that, another project came up. And that project is titled Constructions. And it was a short film. There was the very first competition that Sundance and the Directors Guild of America put on out of LA. And it was about a young woman and her struggles. And she had died, and it was a short story, but it was all within 9 minutes. We got to tell her story within that 9 minutes. And so we submitted that, and we had won in our experimental short film. And so we go to the Directors Guild of America, and you know, you're in the very first HD studio in America at the Directors Guild. And we're just like, whew. I remember I just cried, because I was like, I can't believe our little short film from Hawaii is here. And it got something at that time, 60,000 views in 1 month, which was like the very beginnings of online video content. And they gave us feedback from Sundance, several of the folks there, and they were just like, we were blown away that you could tell a story with an arc all the way through within that 9 minutes. And you know, it's still, I know other professors here, it's just like, yeah, it's still that way. Can you tell a story in 10 minutes or less? You know, it's still very relevant. That film ended up traveling around the world to all the festivals, winning all kinds of awards. And it's still in distribution. It got picked up for distribution through the PBS out of the Asian American consortia that's in San Francisco. So that is still there. And then there's other avenues that films go. And those other areas are through education. So literally the University of Hawaii campus will buy like 5 videos at that time, not DVDs, videos at that time. And they're buying those. And I have to say, how did we shoot that? Because did we have the equipment right then? No. I had a brother-in-law, my sister-in-law's brother, who went to Leeward Community College, got his 2-year degree here in video and filmmaking, and he worked for the local TV station when it was on Kapiolani Boulevard, I think it was I thought it was KGMB at the time, can't remember. And the 10 o'clock news just finished, and then we went to us, and the team that was there helped us make this short film with their brand new Beta HD cameras, and shot it with a green screen, and we shot it there between the hours of 11 o'clock and 3 a.m. And that's how we did all of that work in there. And then we took that and did all the post-production on it. So we found people, and they were just excited to do it in the news, because we're so used to news and cutting things and turning it out and just, here it goes, blasting it. And they were like, doing something that's so like in another direction was just like a first time for them. And for them to participate and support us in that way, they were just grateful. So, and when I explain that, it's like a lot of my filmmaking is in that same way. How can I involve more people in it to where they can support the story as much as possible? From there, we went, and there was more projects that kept coming up. And after that is when I actually started Hula Girl Productions. Because I was like, we were all going in different directions. I gotta remember, I'm with college students, and they're going off to the mainland, or they're here, or they're going off in another area. And so all of us were still in touch with each other. And I remember Ke Kulana He Mahu, Remembering a Sense of Place, was the next one. And that was a feature film. My kumu for Hawaiian language was Edith McKenzie. Edith McKenzie is a genealogist. She's written several books. She taught for the UH system. And I just love her. You know, that was my language that I took, was with her. And I remember asking her questions about Mahu and the historical perspectives and genealogies. And we started working on that. And it was about a young man that was killed here, murdered out at Sandy Beach. And so it was going in that direction, and it went all kind of directions with all the interviews. There was stuff going on in the state at that time, and I was doing outreach work, and that's when I met Hina. Hina Le Moana Wong, Kalu. And Hina today, she's a force with our main state capital in different areas. And she chairs the OEV with our local burial council for the Hawaiian community. So we've worked on several projects together between here, Tonga, New Zealand, and the mainland. And the bottom line is those relationships that you build. And I learned, I was telling Erwin this, I learned this early on years ago, that, and this was going to festivals in the late 90s already. Spielberg's right-hand man, his production manager, line producer, and I would meet these guys because I would go to festivals with the film, and you would meet people. And one of the things, and I had, the razors first came out then, when they first came out. So I had my little razor, you know, and he was like, oh, can I ride that? And I was like, sure, go for it. And so we had some fun, and then we were waiting on people to show up at the DGA, and we were early. And we sat down, we started talking, and come to find out he was the guy that was going to lecture for all of the filmmakers there. But one of the things that he said to me then that I'll never forget, he just said, this business, you never stop learning. Things are constantly changing, and if you think you got it, you're in trouble. You're always learning, and you have to stay open to learning new ideas, new ways of doing things. And I'll never forget him saying, it's just penetrated in my head. And the second thing he said, it's all about relationships. And you burn bridges, or you don't show up, you know, to a job on time, or you show up and you give some, like, my dog ate my lunch, that's why I'm late, you know. It's like, people don't want to hear that kind of, it's just, it's all about relationships. And he goes, and it doesn't change. It's all about relationships. And if you're not good with relationships, find a partner who is good with relationships that you can work with. So there's other ways you can do this in collaboration. So if you're not good with talking to people, find a partner that you can work with, and you've seen it, you know, the Russo brothers, all these different producers that are out there that are successful. One is good at one skill and the other is good at another skill, but they work in collaboration together. So those are two things that I really learned, and you know, going to those and meeting people. And there's a lot of networking and all of that. And today I don't hit too much networking things because I'm just like, done that, did that. But what I can tell you I did through all that engineering skills ended up going into a lot of producing. And what I mean by that is I put together proposals. You know, I have a screenwriter that's going to give me a script. I have to be honest, in this last week alone, I've probably gotten 5 emails with 5 different scripts from 5 different places around the United States and here. And everybody has a story. And of course, the stories that I really love the most are right here in my home. And you know, I'll read those other ones and I'll look over them, and I have friends that know I'm a filmmaker and they're entertainers locally, very successful, but they have a story they want to tell, and I tell them, and I kind of guide them, get a writer you can work with, put it into a screenplay. And if the screenplay doesn't get made, put it into a book, copyright it. And copyright, that's a biggie. That's a real biggie. And I won't even touch it if it's not copyrighted. And it's for the protection of the story. If it's not copyrighted and I don't see a WGA number there or a Washington copyright number on there, don't even want to touch it. Don't even want to go there. I have projects where you always send out NDAs, non-disclosure agreements. In other words, you have to keep it private. You sign that before you even read it. And I'll walk people through writers, how to do that. And they're so simple and easy. But believe me, when I say this, between working out of New York, San Francisco, LA, is they want Hawaii stories. My area that I love to do is working with independent projects, and I honestly pick and choose what I want to work on. So Christopher Kumu Hina just, you know, contacted me. You know, he's got an agent now after Waikiki, and you know, he's got all these projects, and we sit down and talk, and I was like, yeah, I can work on that, and yeah, I can work on that. But I wait until it comes to fruition. And then he might find out there's some pitfalls in it, and you know, I'll have to rewrite it, you know, and do this. And then they don't like it, and then it comes back. And what I'm getting at is probably, I just purged a bunch of files. You know, probably 9 out of 10 never make it. Maybe even 19 out of 20 never make it. They stay stories, or they're books, and we're still pushing them. You know, people wonder, how did Waikiki make it? We did it on an ultra low budget, and it was based on that film financing of $200,000 to do it. And as we were working on it, more people came on to support it. And we had local vendors in film and media, talking about local folks. Danny and with Hawaii Media supported us and worked with us to do that. So what I do as a producer is relationships again, treat their equipment like it's prime real estate, treat it well, make sure I have insurance on my equipment to protect them as well as protect the project. You know, I see people sometimes they don't do insurance, and I'm like, no, you want to protect the relationship so you can go back to those same people again and they could support on the next one. And I'll share with them, you know, like a pitch deck, you know, and I don't, have you guys even covered pitch decks, what they are? Anybody? No? Pitch decks are like, here's a good example of one. You know, I'm presenting to someone, and in here, they're usually like just a couple of pages, and I'll pass it around so you guys can look at it. This one's called Hood Dragon, and I was contacted by a local producer, and the guy that does Let's Go Fishing, Dean Sensui. So Dean, Keeley, Luke Kim, another producer, photographer, and they had this project, and it's based out of Atlanta, Georgia. So it would be shot in Atlanta. It's Hood Dragon. How does Hawaii come in this? Well, it's all Hawaii producers on it, but they want a budget for it. So I put together a Hawaii team. A DP that I know here. Who can do audio? Who can do this? Who can do those areas? How can we get Hawaii on board with this? Because in Hawaii, when we have projects that come here working NCIS or all these other shows, they usually bring their team, their main team from the mainland, because I've worked with many of them. They bring them here, come here, we fill them with the labor through the unions. So now we're going to Atlanta, and we're bringing our prime team there, and then they fill with their labor over there. So it's kind of opposite, but at the same time, I'm having to hold ground to take care of. This is where the mommy comes in. It's where I'm holding ground to take care of my crew to make sure they keep those positions. And they select who their team is as their assistant camera, second camera. Who is their audio? Who is their AD assisting that director? And we're also making sure our writer-director on this is a sensei. So he has his own background. You can pass that around. His own background as far as writing. Come to find out, he's got like 20 scripts. They're all in different areas, and they're African-American scripts. And he's even got, there's so many good scripts, but the bottom line, this script, and this has all been through COVID time period, this script has been seen by Warner Brothers, Sony, all the major ones. They all want it, but at the same time, they're just like, but we want it's the negotiation. So I've got to keep the relationships with them and then the negotiations. What I honestly love and don't love about studios is a lot of times they will bring on their team and all of their executives, and they'll make the film the way they want to make it. My writer-director wants to keep the continuity of his story as it is, and he wants to leave it as that. So he doesn't want to give up those rights. And so therefore, we haven't gone there. Now we have investors out of China that are interested, Chinese government. The main grandmaster out of Atlanta is just won like all of the awards, pretty much like 80% of the awards in China, in Beijing and Shanghai. And now he's revered as the guy. Benny Ming is his name. And Benny is just, I get goosebumps, but he's just so well respected, calm, and he is representing us. We brought him on as a producer with us. We have to at this point, because now the Chinese government wants to do that. How does that affect right now with politics and everything? Yeah, it affects us. I have another project that's about Captain Cook. They don't want to work with us, but yet they were ready to come on board for 60 mil. 50 mil, 60 mil. And I'm like, okay, we just have to wait. Okay, we wait, and we have to let it set. And then another project is in that same boat, but this one they want Wing Chun to be international, and they want it through this. So our agreement with them on this is that they want a documentary about Wing Chun, how it started in China and how it's gone worldwide, and they want to be the central focus. They want rights for distribution in China. We can offer that. There's the difference. I can negotiate those things and then have a team that's with me, including an entertainment lawyer that's working with us on that. So this one just keeps rolling. It started out as, oh, we're going to do it for 5 mil, and then it became 6 mil, and then it became, Connie, can you raise it up 30 mil? And then they were like, they want to go worldwide with this, da 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 da. Okay, 60 mil. Now they want to do independent drone. You know, you've heard of those drone things that people go in, you can ride in them, and they're drone. China is already building them. That company, EHang, now wants to come on board and be an investor, and then we have to show marketing piece in the film at the very end of it. So we write it in the film, showed it in the script, show it to them, and then now they're interested. So what I'm getting at is it's constantly changing. Has the integrity of the story changed? No. We keep the integrity of the story going. So in the pitch deck, we do things like we have to show in there, how does this film unique? Who is our audience? You know, when you do a documentary with PBS, one of the questions they always ask you is, why do I care? You have to have an interest in it. Why do I care? You got to ask yourself that. And who is my audience that's watching this? You know, you may love it, but do the people around you love it? And you're not doing it to please them. However, have you PQ'd any, you know, like any interest in that? So you're finding, you know, what works and what fits. And at the last part of this is I do all this research and I find out what are the top 10 movies over the last 20 years that are like this. And of course, a lot of you know the Karate Kid movies, because it's about a young African-American kid living in the hood, and it's called Hood Dragon. And so the next thing I do is I walk through our writer, director, and our team, and I'm like, we need to trademark the name. We need to copyright the script. We need to trademark the Hood Dragon that we have in there, and so that we keep that. So we keep what we call ancillary rights. So that all the things like hats, all of those things become ancillary rights to it. Another leverage thing that you also apply when you're talking negotiations with your companies. When they did Moana, Moana now has, you go out to Aulani out here, you got Moana hats, you got shirts, you got Moana this, that's ancillary rights. So you can look at what are the profits that this film will make, and I tell you what, more than anything else, you will make more profits so that you can make that next movie on your ancillary rights. More than anything else. So your project becomes your trademarking, your copywriting. So we literally walked down that and we did all of those. Now, did we run through pitfalls? Yes. I can tell you some of the pitfalls. We had a guy that worked for Warner Brothers for 15 years, did what are those, Judge Judy, you know, and all those shows, and then he works on some of them that are now, and then he's not there now, and so he's like, I want a piece of the pie, and it's somebody that Al met, our writer-director there in Atlanta. He's getting people bombarding him constantly that want to be a part of this project. Of course they want to be a part of the project. Who wouldn't? The problem is, are they ethical? Are they looking out for Al's best interest? Or are they looking out with motives, their own best interest? And the bad part about our business is there's a lot of people looking with motives for their own best interest, not for the interest of the project as a whole. So yeah, we went down that rabbit hole to the point where we're talking with a woman that's a representative from Saudi Arabia saying, you know, I'm going to give you this much money from Saudi and da-da-da, and then only to find out she's not real. She's not real. Ever since then, I started signing up for Been Verified, Truth Finder, checking people's backgrounds. We live in Hawaii, and it's like 1 degree of separation. We're talking relationships again. And here we kind of know who's who. We help each other in this community in so many ways. I'm talking about Danny Rosner at HMI. You know, I know the guy. I know his family. You know, it's just they're good people. You know, and it's just there's relationships that we have here. You know, I have four generations of family between the islands. It's just like somewhere you're going to know somebody knows somebody. It's always that 1 degree of separation. But when I'm dealing with people out there and they're investing here, how do I do that? So I've got to do my own homework. And so I do that. And then when I find out what cities he's lived in, and I'll look into where is this guy, let me check the court records because it's all public record. And then I pull it up and I see the court records and I go, oh boy, he's done this before. It's been fraud, you know, and I dig it up. As a producer, it's my responsibility. Again, I'm the mom taking care of this baby, and the baby is the film project. And I check into that. And then I'm like, that's it. How do we do this? And we do it discreetly and with aloha. I'm not going to cuss them out, do all of this, go into Tita mode, because I can do that easily. I can go from 0 to that easily. I sat down and just said, this isn't working. I gave them a timeline. Okay, have your person, if they can come in the next 10 days, that's it, we'll close it. If they can't come in, we're moving on. And you have a time, and I put a deadline on my contracts. So we had a deadline on there. They didn't come through. Okay, bye-bye. And of course, he kept begging to come on. And I was just like, no, we can't do this. We can't do this. And so we moved on. And then other resources, as you know, came on. So it just keeps going. But I find myself having to do that all the time now, you know, especially I meet mainland folks coming here and talk about a small community. You know, it's like I've worked with a producer that's the sister is the treasurer with OHA, and then he's with IATSE, you know, our local union, and then the union is like, well, who's this? And then it's just too small a community. And it's just, after a while, it's just like, nope, we don't want that person here. We don't like how they're treating our locals. And they may not be in the film business, but they're about taking care of locally. Actually, you guys that are walking into this business. And you may not become producers, but you may become producers at some level, you know, creating your own projects. And what that project, like I said, may be a little short film, 3 minutes, and then it just grows, you know, and it grows from there. And I've seen that happen with folks. Another project we did was a Bitcoin film. The first Bitcoin film that was ever made was this one right here called Lava. And we did this again during COVID. And we had the folks we got on this was pretty amazing. We had influencers that were on it. Tiger Miller is a Bitcoin genius, speaks several languages, Chinese, Japanese. He's just brilliant. And at the same time, he's wanting to do this indie film on Bitcoin. And so he gets Arnold Schwarzenegger's son, who wants to get into the films. You know, and then his brother also came as well. So he needed locations. So I'm like, okay, let's see. We're going to look at this and see where we go with it. And I brought, like, the book. Okay, we're going to do a budget. We're going to break down his script, see where it is. I have to think about, when I'm reading a script, I'm not reading it right through. I'm reading it and contemplating, where are the locations, what are the costs? Is this a 2-camera shoot? Is this a 3-camera shoot? Do they need jibs? Do they need steady cams? Because those are all different people. And so as I'm reading through it, I'm seeing those things. What kind of team do we need? How many locations? Waikiki had 28 different shooting locations. And you wonder how. Because we started at Waldron Park, which is right there in Kaka'ako. The homeless all there, because it's a homeless story, a young girl. And going all the way from there through town, all the way through down Chinatown, coming out, going all the way to Sand Island, and finishing up at Sand Island. So you think of all those locations. So with this, he was looking at different locations, and we ended up using a tree house, which you're going to see in another short film that I have here. So his film, it's finished, it's done. He used a lot of AI. He was ahead of the curve. That's just kind of how Tiger thinks, you know. And he finished it. He's already done it. Bitflix and Bitcoin are all on board with this. He travels to Saudi. You know, I learn a lot through this because I'm like, oh, who are those folks? And they're big investors in it. And so I call them up like, you know, 2 weeks ago, and I'm like, where in the world are you right now? South America, Saudi, you know, where? China? And I always have to ask that and go on the WhatsApp, of course. And I was like, where is the film? Is it being distributed? He goes, you know, I had several offers on it, but it's not enough. I put more money into it than what they're offering, so I'm holding it until it's ready. And I was like, okay. So I kind of know where it's at. So I just leave it at that. It's his baby is what I'm getting at. It's his baby. And another one I have is called Chasing Shadows. Chasing Shadows was on Amazon for 7, 8 years. Chasing Shadows we did is all about the solar eclipse, and all these scientists around the world, that's all they do is they go to these places. So we got a scientist out of Australia. Nelson Kwan is actually a graduate from ACM at UH. And he was actually one of the students, he was one of my students. And he did a feature film while he was at ACM. And yes, it got distribution. So that was the first project that I helped him out with. And so he did this documentary about chasing shadows and traveling around the world and being in South Africa and being in the North Pole and just all over the world, in China and Indonesia. You know, we got back our information on it, and I was like, we got distribution because it won some awards in these different festivals we were in, and then it got distribution. And I have to tell you, and it's not just me, it's all filmmakers go through this. We go, well, great, we're on Amazon, we're on Netflix, we're on this. Well, our investors are going, well, where's the money? Well, it's not yet. 5 years go by, well, where's the money? We haven't got it yet. And it may say in our contract, because we look at it, that we can go in and check your numbers and so forth. You have to have a distributor before you even get to that. So you're dealing with the distributor. So we look at it, and it says every 6 months, if we choose to look at the books, we can look at the book. I'll ask, can I look at the books? Can I look at it? No answer. Call, can I look at the book? Yeah, we'll get right back to you. Then I'll email again, because I like everything in writing. So I email everything, and nothing. Follow up again, nothing. Follow up again, nothing. This is what filmmakers go through. You know, and so those kind of areas, I can make sure they're in those contracts, but we're not seeing them. You know, these are all things that when your film is out there, you're like, where do I make the money? So that I can bring it back, give the money, you can restore faith back in your investors so that you can make the next project. So other areas that we go is education. So some of our projects from, oh my God, 30 years ago are still in distribution today. And so some of those avenues that people go is through the education market. And one of our local producers with the Film Fest did this for many years. She created an entire catalog of education films, went worldwide with it online. She sold that business and is doing very well. So there's other avenues is what I'm getting at. I mean, everybody thinks Netflix or in the theater, that's the direct. No, there's other avenues. Whether it's a narrative or a documentary or a short, there's other avenues. Some people I've even found online streaming, and come to find out there's a guy that's Electric Entertainment out of LA. He does a lot of online content. They have their own streaming platform. We did a short film called Lahi, and it is a short film that she's an amazing filmmaker. She went to Yale, came back. She actually interned for a 5.0, met all kinds of people, went back to Yale, finished up, played soccer on a scholarship. And then she's like, I want to come back here and do my film about my grandmother. And so I was like, okay, I'll help you out. And I get a lot of referrals through the film office on a lot of projects. So I kind of pick and choose what I got. Do I have the range, the bandwidth to do it? I'll be honest, do I have the bandwidth to do it? In other words, other projects that are in the line. And I'll look at it and go, and you're going to run into the exact same thing. I was just talking with Erwin about this, and it's the ethics. Because I've had people where there's audio people, sound people, where they'll come, and I hire them, and I'm paying them top dollar for audio. They're coming on, and then next thing you know, I get a call an hour before, and they were like, I can't do it, but I got a replacement. I'm hiring them based on their skill. And it's my passion project that I want them on, but they're telling me they have a replacement. Well, the replacement came in, they were so, not brand new, but young in their audio that it didn't work out great. But it tell you what, I remembered that person, and I was like, I'll never hire them again. It kind of broke that relationship. And I ran into that person later, and I was like, hi, I was still respectful, hi. And then I'm working with Kamehameha Schools. I get contracted with Kamehameha Schools to stage manage and tech direct their live broadcast shows. So I see her there, she's doing audio, and finally we just had a little talk, and she's working with an audio company that works with us every year. And I said, what happened? She goes, well, I was trying to get in the union, and the job came on, and I took it, but I'm so sorry that happened. I'm sincerely apologize, and if you ever need me to do anything. And I'm like, you know, I was honest with her. I didn't hire you because you didn't follow through. And I'm the kind of person, I commit, and I stay on it all the way through. Even if I'm flustered or whatever, I'll find a way, because I'm going to grow up somehow through that experience. Even at my age in the 60s, I'm going to learn something through it. And then we kind of had a little powwow, and I just said, okay, I'll help you out in the future. So when the next time came around, and I'm looking at my list of who's coming on the next live broadcast, because they're working with us for a week, and I was like, okay, I'll add her in there, and I'll give her another chance. And then I'll add her over here, give her another chance. And she's working out great. You know, but I'm like, that's just a big no-no. You don't swap out in last minute, throw someone else in there, so forth. And, you know, that's, again, relationships, you know. And I see some people in the community do that, and then other folks are like, they'll call me. Other directors will call me, both well-known and people learning or whatever, and I was like, don't go there. This is your better choice, because you know you'll have them, they'll stay with you the whole time. They're committed to the project all the way through. And I'm just sharing that with you by experience, because it's going to happen to you. It's going to happen. No matter what skill level you're at, you're going to learn something as you're working on that project. Okay. I'm going to take a little break and at least show you. This is just a trailer. It's just 1 minute. It was made in ACM in the senior year. Cindy Idice is the filmmaker on this. She wrote the script. She adapted the script based on her story, but it's a Hawaii story. And we shot it in the treehouse that's in the back of Manoa. And it's a dear friend of mine's treehouse. And it's like 3 stories. And it's about night marchers and this little boy. And this little boy that you see in this today is kind of like the in-seat boys. He's local boy, but now he's on with one of those groups that travels and goes all over. It's crazy to see him from this first project he ever did to the scared little boy to where he is now as a young man. So it's crazy. But I'm going to put that on, and it's just a 1-minute trailer. And you said Alt-Tab. And it's called The Bridge. This short film won 28 awards internationally.
Ola ka mano o ka hiku. Ola ka ho'oilina na kupuna. Ola na iri a ka kou. Ka hanau na e ola nei. The Kanaka of Hawaii. Those of times past and those dwelling in the present represent the unbroken continuum of life. We endure upon the pathways once traveled by our kupuna, always cognizant of honoring our ancestors and paying proper respect for those whom we descend and those of our future prosperity.
Okay, Tamayo Perry, as you see there, is the surfer that had the shark bite that happened up on the North Shore. And he wanted to do a talking piece, and this was his piece, and he was the main character in this. So he's a very dear, close friend. And so Tamayo and all of us, and it was all just an indie group, and all students, just like you guys, doing filmmaking. And when I laid out that plan, this is like my family. I'm taking care of the family, okay? I'm gonna make sure they all have their meals taken care of, they're all taken care of. And the parents of the kids, because we had like 8 kids in this. In the stream down below, there's a stream that runs right through there. And taking care of the parents that are in the main house. And this little short film, it ended up being a total of, I believe, 16 minutes, 18 minutes total. And it's 28 awards internationally, Europe and Australia for best short film. You know, it's just won a lot. And yet here, nobody really knows about it, you know. And so of course I'm gonna call the friends that have those streaming platforms. Let's get it out there so people can see it. That's what's important, so people can see it. And it's just done, but it's what I'm getting at, it's a student project. It was the first of the projects that first year that UH granted the copyright to the students. And it was also the last semester that they did it because there was a fight between copyrights. And me being a producer that I am, I'm like, no, you're not giving it up and you're not sharing it with anyone. That's your copyright. You wrote the script, you brought the crew together, you own the copyright. And I can't emphasize how important that is. Now, over the years, I've been in fellowships with the International Women in Filmmaking out of LA, the creative labs that are here. There's so many different areas that I've worked in as being in fellowships. I learned so much from those, and I was telling Erwin that it's so important to not just be here, but to travel to those places. I learned line producing. I know how to do it, but I wanted to get better at it so I can do a better job with it here locally. So what I did is I went to LA. They had the back then it was called IFP. Now they renamed it Gotham because they broke off from New York. And so independent film producers or productions. And so they're out of LA. And so they have like these weekend courses, and sometimes they're just all day long, and you're learning all the things about line producing your budgets. And they're gonna be 60 pages, 100 pages. And then from there, I took a master producers class with John Lee. And John Lee is another producer of many Asian films and American films. And so I learned that, and that was like a 3 or 4 day course and going through that. And then a couple of years later, Dove Simmons was here. So he's like the indie producer of many, many years. And Dove Simmons he's passed away, but he has online, like you can order all the DVDs to learn about independent filmmaking and all these things. Well, he was here, took the class, passed all of that for independent producing, and then he had classes for directors, so took those. And I just want to learn about all the different positions, so I'm learning that. At the same time, I don't know, it was a couple of years later, 3 or 4 years later, he had it again, and I was like, I'll just do it as a refresher, because I don't want to get cocky and I want to stay teachable. So I go back and I take it again, and next thing I know, I'm teaching the class with them. It's one of those things. And then I was telling Erwin recently, during COVID, there's called Stage 32, IFP, they have these online courses. And I was like, okay, it's been quite a few years that I've taken these producers classes. Maybe I'll do an online one, see how it goes, because Sundance has them in it. And then I'm taking the class, and then halfway through the class, he's like, well, Connie, you know this. Can you tell them about this? And I was like, okay, I'm But what I have to say as an independent producer, knowing the camera, because I know audio. I've even gotten certified at Alelo in editing, post-production, and I don't do it all the time, but I want to do it. I want to learn it so that I can know what to ask for and what I need. So I get certified in all these areas so that I can become a better producer, a better filmmaker. I take those classes for that very reason. I take, new cameras come out, the Red came out, and then the next, it's constantly changing. The black magic, been learning the black magic, and everybody swears by it. It's the next thing, and it's just like, okay, I'm gonna learn that. So now I use that as well. But it's always changing. And 30 years ago it was film, and I've seen it go through the video, DVD. I went through my files and all these DVDs. Are the DVDs no good? No, they're still good because it's all documented projects that I've worked on. So I have these 2 boxes with all these different movies and everything. And I look at it as, it's just like a hard drive, but it's on a DVD, and I have a DVD player. I can burn it, and then there's the copy. It's just, it's still there. I'm not going to throw it away is what I'm getting at. What else can I share with you? Does anybody have questions? I'm sure or your own projects.
What's your advice for
Networking?
networking?
Networking, some of the organizations, because let people know, Hawaii International Fitness, you can meet I saw a lot of content over those 15 years. And then going back, they've asked me to come back sometimes. Okay, Connie, can you handle the Big Island? But seeing that content, because you meet those filmmakers when they come here. So it's like, that's good. The other networking is when your film is made and you start submitting it to Film Freeway online. That's what everybody uses. And you're putting in EPK, you're putting it all on there. Is when you go to those film festivals, you're going to meet other people. You're going to meet a lot of people. And they're going to have different programs and things that you're going to meet them. But over the years, you build those relationships. But in your own work environment right now, find the people they don't have to be like-minded like you. They may have a different perspective that adds to what you're doing. So keep that in mind. They're going to add to what you're doing, and it only helps. So when I get asked to work on a project like Hood Dragon, I'm being brought in as a line producer. And honestly, when I first started, they didn't have a pitch deck. They didn't have the analysis done. The budget wasn't completed. They had already been working on it for the last 8 years before I even got it. So the first thing I was like, okay, this is the first thing. And then right after we got all of that, I'm like, okay, now we need a trademark. And is it yes, it's copyrighted. Is it copyrighted in DC? let's just take the next step. The WGA is great. It's 20 bucks. You have a treatment outline of what you want to do. You can still send it to WGA online, and they'll copyright it. And then you make sure, here's the other thing, make sure I watermark every page that goes out. And the non-disclosure agreements. Everybody that sees it, including those studios, non-disclosure agreement. So it's like, because I've had some people say to me from the mainland, you know, different places, you're asking me to sign your how dare you? I can't believe you're a nobody. They don't know me because I'm in Hawaii, you know? And I was like, so of course my writer-director will say, well, what do you think of that? And I go, that just means they got something to hide. That's not who we want. Move on. Let's just take a little pause and think about that. Do we want people like that with us? No. Move on. And I have seen it, even through our labs locally. Well-known people locally that have worked in the major studios, and they took a script, and I've seen them talk to the filmmaker, the writer, director, say, I can promise I can get this made. They shop it somewhere else. And when they shopped it somewhere else, another writer-director said, no, I'll take that. Give them a little money, put them over here. Well, he's done all the research in the Native Hawaiian community and everything on it with the family's blessing to do the story. Now it's in another person's hands. Now it goes out, it gets made. He tries to shop it in cans. I see, you know, everything's media now, right? Social media. I'm like, oh boy, here we go. And the next thing you know, the film gets made, it's out. Some of the same actors that he was hitting up are the same actors that are in it. And literally, when we watch it on the big screen, verbatim on some of the lines are from the original script. Verbatim. So what I'm getting at is even the most well-known are not the most respected. And within our community, we know who's who. And so we protect and take care of our stories. It's so important because your stories have a value to them. Our stories in Hawaii have a value to them. I'm getting goosebumps as I say that because people want them. That's how much they want them. There is equity value in it. And if somebody tells you less than that your story is not going to make it, they have a motive to take your story and take it somewhere else. Yeah. So yes, networking is important, but know who you're networking with. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
Guys, hang on to leave the microphone to you.
Just wanted to thank you for coming out here to talk to us and share your stories first. And on that matter, do you have a story that was like, I guess, your favorite to put together and, you know, share with the world?
Probably Kekulana was probably one of my first ones, and it's still doing distribution today. And bringing Hina on board with that. Because I see the result of, and when we did that first project, the Native Hawaiian community, I'm talking about the Pumpy Kanaheles and the activists in our local community, we're talking from the 80s, 90s, and they were like, oh no, we can't have this film out there. So what I did as a producer is I invited them all together with Ku'ume Aloha Gomes up at UH, and we invited like the Lahui of the community there to watch our cut and have questions. So we did a pre-screening. So they watched the cut, and you know what? I got to watch the dynamics of a room about this size of all academics and activists within the community, including Uncle Kimo Blaisdell. And questions and being able to answer them. And then in the end, it was the elders talking with the activists like, this story needs to be told, and it needs to be told now. So we waited until we got their blessing as a whole before we moved on. So that is very, very important. The movie, The Bridge, there were students in the class from Native Hawaiian community were like, why is a Haole girl from the East Coast telling this story? Well, they're all in the same class. It's culturally based stories, and she's writing it based on her family, and now she's putting it into a Hawaiian context. So what I did is I asked Hina once again, Hina, can you preview the screening of this and see this? It didn't have her in there on this part, but she previewed it and she goes, you have to tell this story. The young ones don't understand the importance of the story and the effects of the family and how we move forward. And it had to do with the night marchers in there. There was a night marcher scene in this. And so she goes, that's when she stepped up and said, I want to be that spokesperson in the beginning and in the end. And I was like, do you want to write that? I allowed her to be the writer on that, to write that. Our director, which is Cindy, allowed her to do that. John Kumu, he's passed, but he was our DP on this. And he was just another one. It was like, we have to keep moving forward. And that was an important one. So each project is that way. Waikiki, the film, every time we were shooting, there were people that would come out of nowhere that thought it was real and was ready to start beefing and beating up. I had to hire security off-duty police officers to come on. And so I had an off-duty officer. He loved working with us so much. He goes, the other officers won't understand this, but I understand what you are doing here, Connie. I will be here whenever you need us during this whole from Waldorf Park to, or Waldron Park to all the way through. And one time he worked a double and still came in afterwards because he believed in what we were doing. People called the fire department, they called the police department, they were calling the cops on us. Everything they were seeing they thought was real. And it's not reality TV, it's based on a story. But doing that movie was amazing. I can't even describe it. I know that story. That's the other thing. I know that story. And any one of us in this room could be that girl in that story at any time in our life. But I know that story. So it got under my skin when I read it. And I was just like, it's important. So I pick and choose the stories. Of course, Christopher has a new one come out. So I'm like, okay, I'm working on several projects right now. Can we do this in the summer of next year? How about the summer of this year? You're going to raise the money by then? I'm going to try. And I'm like, let's plan on the summer of next year so we can plan it out ahead of time. We can have proper pre-production. That's my other thing. Proper pre-production so that your team is rested and ready to go. So, Waikiki was another one. And then my passion project, and I always talk about it, is the Glades Project. Hotel Street in the 60s. And that's a project that I have with PBS Hawaii now. I've done all the grant writing. It's literally a 20-year project. It's a passion. I've raised a little here, raised a little here, raised a little money here, and I just keep working. And we finished production phase. Now it's in post. Now I'm still waiting on funding on the back end of the production. And I'm like, I'm not moving ahead until I get that, and then I move into the next phase. Ethics all over again. I'm like sticking to my ethics. And then I'm like, if I have to do this out of my pocket, because I've done this out on, they always say, as a filmmaker, do not use your credit cards. You'll hear that one over and over and over. And trust me, I see it over and over and over. I might be the product of that. And I have done that even on my own projects. But it's a story of a time period where the laws were different, and I've worked on the research on it on the mainland as well as here, because PBS here wanted, how was the reaction on the mainland versus here? And so I've done all of that research, where I've spent a month in a library pulling up screens and scanning and printing and pulling up and doing the research. So I've done that research in order to bring that story forward. And it's an amazing story, and I respect the elders, because all of those women from that time, some of them are still alive and some of them have passed since I've been working on this. They've passed away. But it's a story that's already happening again now within our United States. So it's about protecting culture, our culture. We have a lot to offer in America. We have a lot to offer culturally. More than you know, but we do. Your stories have a value, more than you know. So really keep it tight. Edith McKenzie, my Kumu, always said, carry it here with your heart. And nobody can take that away. There's no wrong or right way. Just know that it's in your heart and you're doing it for the best reasons. Yeah. Other questions?
Thank you so much for your time with us. Thanks so much. I do apologize for a silly question. I really don't know. I never had a experience with that. So those people who brings fundings for any project of yours or anybody's, basically what they are expecting in return, or literally what is like you're gonna give money
when they
back,
have the story?
Or any story. I mean,
yeah.
Whoever is sponsoring, what they are expecting. Are they expecting money back? Are they expecting money back in twice? Or what are they expecting?
There's another producer locally, Minette Louie. She works out of New York, LA, here. Actually, right over here. And she always posts things on Facebook about producers. What producers do, what they don't do. And then there's producers that are in the news stations, and then there's producers in the studios, and they're all very different. They're all, as an independent producer, you almost find yourself having to be more well-rounded and diversified. One of the things that I learned, Hawaiian Portuguese boss, Lehua Cathcart, was an amazing woman. And she said, in Hawaii, to survive, you have to diversify. If you don't diversify in the work environment, you won't survive. And I'll be honest with you, I do producing, and then I have literally Theatrics Hawaii locally. I do stage and lighting. I started doing that about 12 years ago because there was a dip in the business and there was work and I needed to work. And so I started learning stage and lighting. And I started doing that. So now they just call me when they need me. And then now there's Kai Honua, another organization. And then there's Unity, and they go in to do events. Tomorrow there's Hawaii Business Magazine, needs camera people, so I'm on camera, and I'm doing that. So I diversify myself. I can pick and choose which ones, and they send me, information. American Idol is here. When they're here, I'm supervising their office for all the producers. So I've been doing that every year since they've been here, and I kind of block it out, and I just go do that, And it's just, they take care of me. They were like, Connie, whatever you're doing will help you. We know you're a producer, and we're just happy to have you with us. And then I bring on more of you guys, actually, to come out there. Because last year they were like, we need 10 production assistants to be with all of the talent that's for American Idol. And then they come out, and we work on there. This year they were like, we need more. Okay, I'll get you more. And these are all people I've worked in film production with. And then they come work with me, and they were like, wow, this job's easier than working 5-0. and I'm making good pay because there's different rates of pay for every project. So I bring on more people. So I diversify myself. When they looked at there's a page called Staff Me Up. And you guys might want to write this down. Staff Me Up is you can sign on, it's free. You put in there, you put your resume, your background, and then you can check once a week, hey, what projects are in Hawaii? You can just plug in Hawaii. All the studios use this site. There's Mandy and all these other ones. Staff Me Up's been the best. And so you put in there all of your information, and if you want to pay, then they have a pay thing where they can email you what's ever coming in your area. So when that came up and they needed even more people for American Idol, because I'm already working on one project, rolling right into this, I was like telling my local community, go to Staff Me Up, sign up, look at American Idol, they're looking for people. So all these reality shows that come here, House Hunters, not Wicked Tuna, but the other fishing one. You know, they were like, Connie, we know your name on there. You've done 80 different productions. Nobody does 80 productions. And I'm like, I do. 80 different productions in all these different areas, whether it's sound, boom, camera, PA, production assistant, AD. I started out at ADing in this whole business and going in that direction. And the bottom line is they're different. There's so much online now that it's kind of right at your fingertips. But I diversify myself in that way. Kamehameha schools. They tell me their schedule ahead of time, and then I know where it is. I set my rates at where it's at, and then I work with Kamehameha schools. And I usually am taking care of 100 different people. And it's a lot of my production management skills, taking care of the crew. And at the same time, I've got 1,800 kids that are all coming in. So I have a big responsibility. Yes, I do work 16-hour days, 20-hour days. That comes with the turf. This is not a 9-to-5 job. Maybe if you were working with a news station, maybe. But you want to go independent or even with the studios, because I see all those studio guys, they're long days. When you're working on 5.0, I have a lot of our local guys that do camera on 5.0 in these shows over the years. They get on, they want a referral. I put my name forward to help them, and they get on. They'll do it for 2 or 3 years, and they're like, I'm not seeing my kids grow up. I'm working 6 days a week, sometimes 36 hours straight. That's just the realities. And do you have any other project? Yeah, I got another feature. Do you want to be on? Yeah, I'll do it. It's an indie. You know, you're going to make, anywhere from $150 to $350 a day. Are you okay with that rather than your steady pay? And they're like, yeah. And I'm just upfront, very transparent what that budget is. Very transparent. And for me, it's about the story. It's about the story. And it's a local story. I had more union people on Waikiki because it was the story, and they wanted to participate because of the story. I had so many vendors come on board that are restaurants, L&L Barbecue, the local Thai restaurants, in order to feed the crew and make sure they're taken care of. And have a runner going picking it up and then doing this and that. Locations, Hawaii International Film Festival, for their office when they were in Iwalei. We needed it for the zombie film. That's one that's going to be coming out. I already got wide release. So that was the first zombie film. I had to be a part of it. And so that project, same thing. They offered their office space so that we can have wardrobe and everything in there. And then they were just looking at it like zombies and what else? And then, yeah. It was called Dead Season. The first one, Dead Season, you'll see it is on YouTube. You can watch that. And this is the second one, Decade of the Dead. But it was fun. And we work with Kualoa Ranch. And those folks out at Kualoa Ranch, which is Judd family from way, way back then, is supportive of local independent films. Jambalaya shot out there at the same time we were shooting out there. And then we worked together on how we're going to do locations. So I set up contracts with them, work with Manoa Valley for the waterfall scene. So we use the old amphitheater for the zombies. So it's working with them and making that happen. You know, it's just, every project has its own thing, but I tell you, when we did the zombie film, it felt like a family. And we needed 300 people, actors and all that, for running zombie scenes and going through Kualo Ranch. But they're fun, they're exciting. Yes, I'm working 16, 20-hour days, but I'm having a blast as I'm doing it. And I always tell people, if you're not having fun, then this isn't for you. Don't do it. And I bring on the guys that work on, now they're day players a lot of times on NCIS and these other shows, and then they come and they work on the indie projects, you know. So I have a great relationship with Irish at the union and be able to work that out. And she already knows what kind of producer I am. I'm going to make sure they get their breaks, and I'm going to make sure they get their meals, and I'm going to make sure they get their rest and their turnaround time. That's the other thing. That's a relationship. She knows me. And I'm like, come on, Irish. I've been doing this for 30 years. Let's keep making movies, but let's make them in Hawaii. Let's do our own stories. Instead of people out there doing our stories, let's do our own stories. And we have a lot to offer the world with our stories. Yeah. And here's another cue in. I work with nonprofits locally. So one of them is Mana Maoli. Now, Hawaii Filmmakers Collective, which all of you should know about, Hawaii Filmmakers Collective started, and our first project, The Bridge, was the first one with them when they first started. That was like 12 years ago. And we used our casting and everything in their location. They're all about independent filmmakers, just like you. And if you're a student, you get free membership there, okay? And they're based in Kaimuki area. And they are a collaborative of meeting people that have retired from the business, moved back home, and they're working with other filmmakers, and they're making local films. In other words, they've worked for the studios, and they're back here, and that's a great networking right there. Hawaii Filmmakers Collective. Jana is amazing. She's the new executive director there. She's doing a fabulous job. And they're set up as a nonprofit as well. So when I have investors come through, and I have a short project, and I do this often, that comes through, and I have worked with them before, I'll look at the script, see what they have, and they were like, okay, Google wants to sponsor this project. They want to put in $100,000, and it's a short film. But they only want to do it if there's a nonprofit. They can get the write-off. So they want the write-off. There's a lot of that, more than you know. They need the write-off, they have the extra money, and so I'll have them on it. So I'll turn around and I'll contact either HFC or Mana Maoli, which is our local Hawaiian music and arts. And then there's other nonprofits. And then they'll make a donation to them. They'll write it as a donation. A percentage stays with them. It's usually like a 5%, 4% that stays with that nonprofit, and then the rest goes to the filmmaker, and the filmmaker goes and makes the movie, and that's who the sponsor is on the project. So what do they get out of it? On those situations, which I set up often, is they have the tax write-off that they have on it. Hood Dragon, they want the tax write-off. The Captain Cook story, they want the tax write-off. The investors. They want that more than anything else. They need the tax write-off. I wish I could get like that. That would be great. So there's a lot of that out there, but your nonprofits. Ohina is another one. Ohina, they do a lot of film labs and so forth, but they're another one. And they do a lot. And they've been around for about 30 years now. Jason Suapaia, who I was telling you, yeah, he's one of the founders of Ohina. So when I was going to the mainland 30 years ago, I would see these nonprofits, IFP, these ones that are in LA, New York, San Francisco, and I was like, God, I wish Hawaii had that. I wish we had that in Hawaii. but I was going there to learn what was out there. And so when Hawaii Filmmakers Collective started, I was just like, I really pushed hard with Tom and Kainoa to like, can we make this a nonprofit? Can we make this, there's so many, no, let's get it started first. And they got it started and it was going and it was good. And they have an amazing space. It's probably twice this size right here. That's how big their space is. They got 2 sides of a room. And they do screenings there. They do labs there. And they also do if you need a casting call, you can use it as a casting call. Alelo is another excellent. Done projects there with our local OHA and Liliuokalani Trust and so forth, where we connect with Alelo and we shoot in their studio and utilize the studio. And then yes, they have the credit that's on there. And then whatever their fees are, pay it, which is minimal. And you have a studio that you can use professionally. So that there's so many different ways of doing things. And grant writing, they're like, no joke. 600 different funders worldwide that I can go through, and I set up a calendar as a producer, and I'll go all the way through the year, and I'll do the homework on it, and it takes me 2 or 3 days, and I'll put in there in that 2 or 3 days all the different funders that fit that category, whether it's documentary or narrative, and I'll look at that, and that's just a whole nother rabbit hole you go down. But you're going to have someone on your team that loves your project that maybe will go that route. But that's a specialty area as well. But I find myself doing that. Whether it's government funding or whether it's PBS or whether it's private nonprofits, you know, there's just so many different ways. And you have to be creative in order to get that passion project funded. So I'm always looking at all those different opportunities are out there. And I tell you, Lisette Flannery, who is professor at ACM at UH, she used to always say, I've had more turn downs, over 100 of them over the last for her project. And I was like, oh no, I beat you. I went through all of my files and purged everything finally after this 20 years, and I go, 141. And out of that 141, I think I got like 8. But it also got me to the point where I'm at now. And my project budget overall is at $350,000. So a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here, but I don't give up. I don't give up because it's my passion project. And for me, it feels like it's got to be done and in the story and to honor the elders more than anything else. Yeah.
I know some of you have some more questions, but we're going to have to stop here. Please, maybe you can ask Connie, after the presentation. But I'd like to thank you, Connie.
Thanks.
That was a wonderful presentation. Thank you very much.